Why is unshakable faith so important to you? Because without it, you won't follow your intuitive guidance. You won't act or trust that your prayers are going to be answered. You won't know or do what's your heart's desires without that unshakable faith. So how do you actually get that unshakable faith? I'm Deepa Liu. I'm the creative mystic, and I was guided to share with you the two biggest misconceptions of what unshakable faith is, why you have so much fear, and also how to recognize it so that you can actually go from that fear to unshakable faith. And what unshakable faith is, because how will you recognize when you're in it if you don't know what it is, right? And 4, how to actually move from that fear to unshakable faith. And there's 3 things I'm going to talk about that will move you to that, okay? So let's get going. So misconception number 1 about unshakable faith. People will believe that I have unshakable faith if I believe in higher power, or if I believe in God. That means I have faith. Okay, but yet that person might have fear most of the time. Fear to the point that they never act on anything that's true, never act on their intuitive guidance, never act or believe that their prayers can be answered. And if you have that, then that's not unshakable faith. Okay, that's misconception number 1. Misconception number 2 now is that people believe, if I believe in God and I have unshakable faith, I won't ever feel fear. I'll be fearless. And I tell people that's a misconception about unshakable faith too. Because if you're in a human body, and if you're watching this, which you are, right? You're a human body, you have a human body, and you've been hardwired for some fear, okay? So that hardwiring of fear is supposed to keep you alive. And you need to honor the survival fear that you have, okay? And so to think that you'll never have fear and be fearless is a misconception, all right? So why do you have so much fear? Because you've been programmed for fear. Since the time you were little, throughout your childhood and as you're growing up, and it even happens now as an adult, you are getting programmed for fear. When you were little, the first fear you were programmed with was don't talk to strangers. And yes, you don't want kids to be going up to strangers, but that programmed fear of don't talk to strangers will, for some people, float into adulthood, where they don't want to meet new people, or they're afraid to go on job interviews because what's all that? New people, strangers. You have to interact with strangers, okay? And that fear, those programmed fears, get confused and thought of as survival fears, and they cause you to not act. You do what? Freeze or flight, right? You run away from something because you're afraid of it, or you freeze up and you don't act on it. One of the two. You run away, or you freeze up and you never act on it. And those fears, which unfortunately disguise themselves in many forms as worry, doubt, anxiety, anger, frustration. And here are the big ones that stop people, okay? There are fears that you've been programmed with, that you think that something's not being logical or that's not being responsible. Okay, and those are the ones that really are disguised. Most people know when they worry about things or they doubt something, they're in some kind of fear. Some don't, and I'm curious to know, are you one that has known that when you're in worry or doubt or frustration or anger that you're in fear? Because you are. I can't go into the whole explanation, or this could be, an hour video. But those are ways that it disguises itself as fear. But when you say that's not logical, that's not practical, those are beliefs that you've been programmed with to not do something because of what you were told, either by your friends, your family, your parents, or you saw in society, and it stops you. Except the thing about logic, let me explain to you about logical, is that logic is based on the past. It could be the past of society or the past of what's happened to you or what happened to your parents. Most kids get programmed of the parents' past. They don't want their kids to go for something because they went for it and it scared them and they didn't succeed, and they don't want their kid to get hurt, so they program it with you, that fear into you. Okay, so you don't want to look bad about your parents because of it. They just didn't know better, okay? But those fears that could be something where you say that's not logical and so you don't act on it, those are based on something in the past, not what's necessarily happening now. And so every like new thing that gets invented, if you go by logic, people would say it's not logical to think we can do it. I always talk about the Wright brothers, right? The plane, cell phones. 50 years ago, people thought you were crazy. They would say, that's not logical. You can't do that, okay? Same with what's practical. What's practical to one person isn't practical to another person, okay? Because we're all wired slightly different. So what was practical to your parents might not be practical to you. And it's also called what's practical in that time period. See, as time moves on, as we continue to move forward in a more advanced stage, which if spiritually, if you know anything about yoga, we're in this ascending to Para Yuga, which is not super important for this talk, but it is important in that you want to know we're in the growth cycle of we need to be looking forward. That's the most important thing. Looking into the past is going to keep you contractive, not going for your dreams and your goals and your heart's desire, which is the most important thing, okay? So you have to be looking forward. And in this process of looking at fear, when people say something's not practical, it may have been something that wasn't practical to do 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And nowadays, because things are so rapidly changing, right? It could even be 2 years ago. Okay, a year ago, because technology is always changing. We're growing in our consciousness as human beings. We're learning, to actually start to bring the energy of honoring, when they're different. So obviously we still have more to grow on that on the world, but there's more acceptance of, there's more interracial marriages, things like that show that we're in this growth cycle towards accepting, differences more. We still have more to grow. But so that fear of what wasn't practical back then, 10, 20, 30, like I said, years ago, isn't necessarily true now. So you have to look at when you're saying that's not logical, that's not practical, whether you're saying it out loud or in your head, and that's where you have to start to do some of the things so you can shift this. Just go, wait a minute, is that really not logical today or not practical today? Or was that just a programming my parents gave me or that I saw when I was growing up, but now that I'm an adult, it's different, okay? And start to become aware of that, because those are the ways that fear disguises themselves and keeps you from moving forward, from following that guidance, intuitive guidance, from believing that your prayers are definitely going to be answered. All those things, okay? So let's now talk about what is unshakable faith, because in order for you to recognize it, you have to know what it is, right? So what is unshakable faith, okay? Unshakable faith is actually being able to recognize when you're in that fear. And whenever you're in fear, you're in your subconscious mind. So you'd be able to recognize, I've dropped to fear. Now, what you want to be able to do is recognize when that fear is itty bitty, not, oh my God, I'm having a meltdown, or I'm so worried that it's turned to anxiety. You want to catch it when it's small, because when you catch it when it's small and you move right back to faith, see, that's what real unshakable faith is being able to recognize when you're in the fear and move back into that connection, that knowingness, that oneness, that you are one with higher power, okay? And here's the key about unshakable faith. You know when you're in unshakable faith when you actually act on your intuitive guidance, when you actually act on the answered prayers. So what I mean by that is, when you make a prayer, see, every prayer that we make, right, that you make, is something that you either want to be, do, or have. Isn't that true? I know it is for me. I pray for growing spiritually, to maybe be more patient, or to be more aware of those things, to be able to have the energy of love no matter what someone is coming towards me with. And I'm still working on that, because some days I can be in that energy of love and joy, and someone can be grouching at me, and some days I don't. I drop to that place, right? So I pray about those things. I want to be that more enlightened soul that we all are in us, but I want it to actually be coming and exuding out of me. Okay, so do. Like I want to be able to do certain things, right? Whether it's do something more in like that I convey like in what I'm doing right now in the videos that I create for you, okay? Or I want to have something, right? Maybe you want to have a bigger house, or you want to have a nicer car, okay? So all of our prayers are be, do, or have, right? So when you actually have that unshakable faith, you have these prayers and you actually act on a cause, taking an action towards bringing that into your life. Okay, because the prayers that you do to God, to higher power, to Divine Mother, whatever the name you use, come through causes we make. You hear things, the cause might just be the prayer, okay? And the prayer that with unshakable faith that it's going to show up. I mean, I just heard a prayer of somebody praying for something they wanted for free, and it showed up for free. Okay, so anything's possible, depending on the amount of unshakable faith you have, because that unshakable faith means that your energy is lined up. Okay, but here's the key: unshakable faith doesn't mean you never have fear. Okay, I want you to understand that. When I got the download, I want to give this example, that I was told to put on my website that I can tune into your energy, to someone's energy, and see your spirit guide that's here to help you in manifesting your purpose or overcoming a challenge. I was like, when I first got the download, I go, okay, I'll go put that on my website because that's what I got to do. And I got how you do it and all this stuff, and to go put it on my website. In meditation, I felt like, like I was just like, okay, peaceful, moving. But when I got out of it, I was like, it's kind of scary. I don't really know if I can do this or not. But I had enough unshakable faith to go, I'm going to put this up on my website because that's what I was guided to do. Okay? I acted on it even though there was some fear coming up when I was taking the action. I was able to override the fear because I had enough unshakable faith that I know that Divine Mother is never leading me down a bad path. Whenever I follow these intuitive guidances, I only see life get better. Okay? So when you think that the fear is never going to be there because we've been programmed, that fear will come up. And if you mistake it for survival fear rather than programmed fear, you won't act on it. So I'm at the place where I'm able to go, that's my program fear, I'm going to act anyway. And that is what real unshakable faith is, so that you can actually get answered prayers, follow your intuition, receive the heart's desires that you really want. Okay? So how do you actually do that though? So let's start talking about the 3 things you need to do that. So first thing you need to start to move from fear to unshakable faith is awareness. The awareness to recognize when you're in fear, when you're having worry or doubt, when you're using your mind, your intellect to stop you from moving forward rather than supporting the spiritual truth that will help you move forward. Okay, so you have to start to become aware of like, I'm having a little bit of fear. Let me do something different. See, whenever I catch myself going into fear, because I go into fear just like anybody, because we're all in a human body. I've had my own programming that I've been working on changing, okay, but it's not all changed yet. And so how can you start to do that is one, awareness. The awareness to actually recognize when you're in it, when it's a little itty-bitty fear, not a big full-blown one. And if you start to ignore what you're sensing on the inside, it can go into a big full-blown one. And so you want to recognize it when it's small. So you have to develop that awareness. Now, one of the ways you develop that awareness, I always talk about meditation, because meditation, the practice of it on a daily basis, helps raise your level of awareness. But if you're not someone who's ready to commit to a meditation practice, you can start with committing to quiet time, taking just some self-reflection time of checking in with yourself, okay? The other thing you can do throughout your day is take the moment to breathe. I call it the power of the pause. You pause and you deep belly breathe where you, and then exhale. And inhale again. And exhale. And you do those deep belly breaths where you're drawing your energy inward or just checking in with yourself. See that when you calm that breath, you calm your mind. And when you calm the mind, you become aware of what you're sensing. And so you can do one of those two other things besides the meditation that can start to help you be more present of what am I feeling? What am I sensing throughout your day? And that's the thing, okay? So that helps you develop the first thing you need, which is awareness, okay? Now, the second thing you need to actually be able to have this unshakable faith is steady. Now, what are you studying? Study. You want to study spiritual truth. That spiritual truth might be from something that if you have a formal religion that you follow that scripture, that text. Could be the Bible if you're a Christian. It could be, if you're a yogi, the Bhagavad Gita or the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. If you're Buddhist, it could be the writings, like of Nichiren Daishonin, if you're that form of Buddhism, which I am. Or if you're Zen, some kind of Zen text that helps you. But you study. Now, study is important, okay, of spiritual truth. And also you could be studying, if you don't have a particular path, you can be studying law of, like the manifestation laws, because all of these are threads of truth. So you could be studying someone who talks about the law of attraction. Now you need to make sure it's somebody who really understands these laws and how to apply them, because it's not about just studying the law. You want to use the knowledge you're gaining and apply it in your life, okay? But the study is important, but not just the study of knowledge, but here's the second study you have to do that's really important, okay, and that most people don't do, is study yourself. Now, what do I mean by study yourself? Self-reflection. You check in with yourself. You study, and you notice, what patterns you have. What types of things trigger you into fear and cause that, so that you can look at, how can I heal that and let it go? Okay, because the more you understand where you are, you study yourself in the sense of having some self-reflection time, if not daily, at least weekly. It's better if you can do it daily. And it doesn't have to be a long time. It could be like I said, you take a moment and you stop and you breathe deeply into the belly and exhale, and you bring your energy inward, and you're just checking in with yourself of what are you feeling and sensing. It could be that. Could be you journal. I journal with myself to see, especially if I'm feeling like some unrest. I'm like, something's going on that I maybe I've been too busy to know what it is. I'll sit and journal. So it's about self-reflection. You can self-reflect by just turning your energy inward. You can self-reflect by journaling and asking yourself what's going on emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, and let yourself answer, okay? So that's study, spiritual truth, study yourself, which is self-reflection, okay? So you want to do those things, awareness and study, okay? The third thing you have to do, which is one of the most important too, they're all three important, is practice. Now, if you're someone like me who does a spiritual practice every morning, okay, I do every morning, every evening, but if you just do once a day, then you might think that's my practice, okay? I meditate every day, or maybe you chant, or maybe you read, you study something, you think that's my practice. But practice is about applying it in your life. So you take your practice, if you do a spiritual practice of meditating or chanting or something else that you do, and you have to go, when I meditate, I always get this peaceful, more joyful, loving, open-hearted feeling when I'm doing it, okay? I always feel better after I meditate and chant. That's why I've done it for so many years, is because, my wife asked me once, how have you been consistent so many years? And I said, because I just remember when I feel like not doing it, that I know when I get done, I'm going to feel better, and I do. And so I do it, sit down no matter how I feel. Now, the key, though, is not just feeling better after How do you take that feeling that you have in it and bring it into your day? How do you actually apply it, okay? Same with study. You don't study to just get more knowledge. You study to go, how can I apply this spiritual truth that I just read about it? How do I apply it in my life to make my life what I truly want it to be? Step into my knowing my heart's desires and acting on it. How do I apply it so that I can be, do, or have, right? What I want to be in the world. So if you're wanting to be a more loving, patient person, and I'm not telling you that's what you should be. It could be you want to be more successful. How do I apply that to be more successful in my career or my business? It could be whatever it is, be, do, or have. How do you apply that so you can have that? Now, I recommend starting with the being first, because the being affects the doing and the having. When you start to be a certain way, all the doing and having falls into place, okay? So how do you be like more, have stronger faith? How do I be a person with unshakable faith so that I act on my prayers, I act on my intuitive guidance that comes, because that's what's going to transform your life. If you really are unhappy with any area of your life, okay, now you might be pretty happy with it, but there might be one little area, and even there you want to look, how can I apply it for that one area? But you might be somebody who you have more areas of your life, you have more of your life is you're not happy with and you're not satisfied with than you are happy with. Then you want to look at how can I apply it in those other areas. And so it's about practicing. Taking what you do when you do the practices and the study and applying it to your life. And how can you do that throughout the day? One of the ways you do that is by when you take that self-reflection time and that awareness to notice, was I more patient? Oh, am I approaching this in my life, doing this from a place of fear? Am I making choices and decisions from a place of what's true in my heart? Or what I'm afraid of? Am I trying to stay away from something I'm afraid of? Or am I actually going towards what is in my heart, my true heart's desires? Okay? So I'd love to have you share in the comments of the awareness practices, which one you're going to apply, because I said awareness is the first thing you have to start to raise to be able to have this unshakable faith, to catch when you're in that fear, so that you can move back to unshakable faith by doing something new and different. The study, the practice, reading something scripturally, go and practice a meditation or breathing, something like that, that will bring you back into that unshakable faith, that knowingness that you're not alone, that you're one. Okay, please share with that in the comments. And if you like what you saw here, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, a like, it all helps me. Oh, and share this with anybody that you might find would benefit from it. Have a miraculous day. Blessings.